The first thing Sergeant Ethan Carter noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful kind. Not the quiet before dawn or the stillness of a desert night. This silence felt wrong. It pressed against his ears like pressure underwater, thick and unnatural, as if the world itself was holding its breath. "Radio check," he whispered. Static answered. Behind him, his team moved in tight formation, boots barely making a sound on the shattered concrete. The city used to be alive. Karachi Sector 9, one of the busiest urban zones on Earth. Now it looked like something had chewed through it and spat it out. Buildings were cracked open like broken ribs, streets layered with ash, cars overturned and rusting though only days had passed. Days. That was all it had taken. "Sir," Corporal Naveed murmured, scanning the rooftops through his thermal scope, still no heat signatures. Ethan nodded slowly. "That's what worries me." The invasion had begun without warning. No ships in the sky, no diplomatic messages, no signals intercepted. Just impact. Massive objects slammed into the earth across major cities, burrowing into the ground like meteors. Then the creatures came. They weren't soldiers in the traditional sense. They were something else entirely. At first, the world called them aliens. Then monsters. Then nothing at all, because naming them didn't help stop them. Ethan raised a fist. The team halted instantly. Up ahead, in the ruins of what used to be a shopping complex, something moved. Not human. Too fast. Too fluid. "Contact," whispered Ethan. The creature stepped into view. It was tall, nearly 3 meters, its body elongated and covered in a slick, black surface that reflected almost no light. Its limbs bent in ways that made the human eye uncomfortable. No visible face, only a smooth head with faint glowing lines that pulsed like veins. It sniffed the air. Naveed's breathing hitched. Ethan's voice was barely audible. "Don't move." The creature's head snapped in the direction. Too late. It screamed. The sound wasn't just loud. It was wrong. It vibrated through bone, through teeth, through the inside of the skull. 2 more emerged from the shadows, then 5. "Engage," Ethan shouted. Gunfire erupted. The Special Forces unit moved like a single organism. Bullets tore through the air, striking the creatures. Sparks flew as rounds hit their bodies, some deflecting, others punching through with sickening resistance. One creature leapt. It crossed 20 meters in a blink and landed in the middle of the squad. Private Rahim didn't even have time to scream before a bladed limb punched through his chest. "Rahim!" Naveed shouted, unloading his rifle point blank. The creature twisted, impossibly fast, its limbs snapping toward Naveed's neck. Ethan tackled him just in time. The blade sliced through the air where his throat had been. Ethan rolled, pulled his sidearm, and fired directly into the creature's head. This time, it worked. The glowing lines flickered violently. The creature convulsed, then collapsed. "Headshots," Ethan yelled. "Aim for the glowing lines." The team adjusted instantly. Another creature charged. Lieutenant Farah stepped forward, calm and precise, and fired a controlled burst straight into its skull. It dropped mid-stride, but there were too many. "They're learning," Farah said through clenched teeth. "They're dodging the shots now." Ethan saw it too. The creatures were adapting, shifting their movements, predicting angles. "Fall back," he ordered. They moved, firing in bursts, retreating through the broken streets. One by one, the creatures fell, but not fast enough. Ethan grabbed a grenade, pulled the pin, and tossed it into the cluster. Down. The explosion tore through the air, sending debris and pieces of alien bodies flying. Silence returned. Heavy, suffocating silence. Ethan stood slowly, scanning the area. "Report. 2 down," Farah said quietly. "Rahim and Iqbal." Ethan closed his eyes for a brief moment. Then he opened them again. "We keep moving." Because stopping meant dying. Hours later, they reached the extraction point. Or what was supposed to be the extraction point. The helicopter wasn't there. Instead, the ground was scorched, and deep claw-like marks tore through the asphalt. "They got the bird," Naveed muttered. "No," Ethan said slowly, crouching near the marks. Something else did. The marks were too large. Too deep. Something bigger had been here. A low rumble echoed through the ruins. Not from the sky. From below. The ground trembled. Move! Ethan shouted. The street split open. From the darkness beneath, it emerged. This one was different. Massive. Towering over the buildings themselves, its body a grotesque fusion of armor and muscle, with dozens of limbs that shifted and reformed as it moved. Its head opened like a flower of blades, revealing a core of blinding white light. Naveed stared. What is that? Ethan didn't answer, because there was no answer. The creature roared, and the air itself seemed to shatter. Then it attacked. The first strike obliterated half the street. Concrete turned to dust. The shockwave threw the team backward like ragdolls. Ethan slammed into a wall, his vision blurring. Up. He forced himself to shout. Get up. Farah was already moving, dragging Naveed to his feet. We can't fight that, Naveed yelled. Ethan wiped blood from his lip. No, he said, but we can slow it down. He keyed his wrist device. This is Alpha 6, he said into the static. Requesting immediate orbital strike. Coordinates transmitting now. Nothing. Then, a crackle. Alpha 6, this is command. Strike is available. Confirm target. Ethan looked at the creature tearing through the city. Confirmed. Impact in 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Hold it off, Ethan said. How? Naveed asked. Ethan smiled grimly. We're human. They split up. Farah and Naveed moved to flank the creature, drawing its attention with suppressive fire. It barely reacted to the bullets, but it noticed them. Ethan ran the opposite direction. He needed a vantage point. A building still stood, barely. He climbed it, ignoring the pain in his ribs, each step a battle against gravity and fear. At the top, he turned. The creature was advancing, smashing everything in its path. Come on, Ethan whispered. He fired. The shot hit one of the glowing nodes along its body. For a moment, it paused. Then it turned. Good. Ethan kept firing, targeting the weak points. The creature roared, focusing entirely on him now. 2 minutes, command said in his ear. The creature charged. The building shook violently as it slammed into it. Cracks spread like spiderwebs. Ethan reloaded calmly. He had 1 magazine left. 30 seconds, command said. The building began to collapse. Ethan stood his ground. The creature climbed, its limbs piercing through the structure, pulling itself upward. 10 seconds. Ethan aimed at the brightest point, the core. 5. He took a breath. 3. He pulled the trigger. The bullet struck the core. For a fraction of a second, everything went still. Then, light, blinding, absolute light. The orbital strike hit. Ethan didn't feel the impact. He didn't hear the explosion. Only silence. Again, but this time, it felt different. When he opened his eyes, the sky was clear. The creature was gone. The city was gone. Everything within a kilometer radius had been erased. Ethan lay on the ground, barely conscious. Footsteps approached. Human footsteps. Farah's voice. He's alive. Hands pulled him up. Naveed laughed, a broken, disbelieving sound. We actually did it. Ethan looked at him, then at the horizon. In the distance, more impacts lit up the sky. More creatures. More battles. This wasn't the end. Not even close. But Ethan smiled. Because humanity was still here. Still fighting. Still refusing to fall. And as long as even one human stood against the darkness, the monsters would never truly win. The war had just begun. And humans didn't surrender. Ethan Carter woke to the sound of metal groaning. For a moment, he didn't remember where he was. Then the pain hit. It came in waves, sharp and heavy, dragging him back into reality. His ribs felt cracked, his shoulder burned, and every breath reminded him he was still alive. Easy, a voice said. Farah. Ethan opened his eyes slowly. The sky above him was no longer clear. Thick gray clouds rolled in, swirling unnaturally, as if something above the atmosphere was stirring them. You're lucky, Naveed added, crouched nearby, reloading his rifle. Most people don't walk away from an orbital strike. Ethan tried to sit up. Failed. Tried again. This time, Farah helped him. Where are we? Ethan asked, his voice rough. 3 kilometers from ground zero, Farah replied. Shockwave through us clear. Ethan nodded slowly. His head pounded, but his mind was already working. Comms. Naveed shook his head. Still patchy, but we're picking up fragments. Fragments of what? Naveed hesitated. Other units. Going dark. Silence settled again, but this time it wasn't empty. It was heavy with understanding. The strike hadn't turned the tide. It had barely scratched the surface. Ethan pushed himself to his feet. We move, he said. Farah frowned. You can barely stand. Ethan met her gaze. And those things are still out there. That was enough. They gathered what little they had left and started moving through the ruins. But something had changed. The city wasn't just destroyed anymore. It was evolving. Black organic structures clung to buildings, spreading like veins across concrete and steel. Pulsing. Growing. What is this? Naveed whispered. Ethan reached out and touched one of the tendrils. It reacted instantly. The surface rippled, pulling back slightly, almost like it was aware. Ethan pulled his hand away. They're terraforming, he said. Farah's eyes narrowed. This fast? Ethan looked around. Not fast, he said quietly. Efficient. A distant scream echoed through the streets. Human. All 3 of them froze. Someone's alive, Naveed said. Ethan didn't hesitate. We go. They moved quickly now, ignoring the pain, following the sound. It led them to a partially collapsed subway entrance. The stairs were covered in that same black organic growth, thicker here, almost forming a tunnel. The scream came again. Below. Ethan looked at his team. Stay sharp. They descended. The air grew colder, darker. The growth covered everything down here, walls, ceiling, even the floor. It pulsed with a faint glow, lighting their path in sickly waves. And then they saw it. A survivor, a young woman, trapped under a fallen beam, struggling to free herself as 2 smaller creatures circled her. These were different, faster, slimmer. The glowing lines flickered rapidly, like nervous systems exposed. Contact, Farah whispered. Ethan raised his weapon. On my mark. The creatures moved closer to the woman, their limbs twitching, ready to strike. Now, gunfire shattered the silence. One creature dropped instantly. The other moved. Too fast. It leapt toward Ethan. He barely had time to react before it was on him, slamming him into the wall. Its limb shot toward his throat. Bang! It froze, then collapsed. Farah lowered her weapon. Got you. Ethan exhaled. Remind me to thank you later. They rushed to the woman. Hey, Naveed said gently. You're safe now. Quote. She looked at him, eyes wide with fear and disbelief. You came back, she whispered. Ethan frowned. What do you mean? She pointed deeper into the tunnel. They're building something, she said. And they're not alone anymore. Ethan exchanged a glance with Farah. Not alone. The woman nodded. There are humans down there. That didn't make sense. Alive? Naveed asked. She shook her head. Not exactly. A low hum filled the tunnel. Ethan felt it before he heard it. A vibration in his chest. Deep, powerful. They're waking it up, the woman whispered. Ethan stood. Then we're already late. He looked at Farah and Naveed. We go deeper. The tunnel opened into a massive underground chamber. What used to be a subway hub was now something else entirely. A hive. The walls were completely covered in the black organic material, forming structures that looked almost deliberate. Organized. And at the center, Ethan stopped. Dear God. A massive structure rose from the ground, pulsating with light. It looked like a cocoon, but inside. Shapes moved. Human shapes. Connected. Integrated. They're using us, Farah said, horrified. Ethan clenched his jaw. For what? As if answering him, the structure pulsed brighter. And something stepped out. It was human, or had been. Its body was partially covered in the alien material, veins of light running through its skin. Its eyes glowed. But its face, it was still there, still aware. "Help," it whispered. Then it screamed. The sound distorted, shifting into something inhuman. And then it attacked. Ethan fired. The rounds hit, but the creature didn't stop. It moved like the others, fast, precise, but there was something more. It anticipated. It adapted faster. "They're combining us," Naveed shouted. "Using human biology." More of them emerged. Dozens. "Fall back," Ethan ordered. But the exits were already closing. The organic walls shifted, sealing them in. "No way out," Farah said. Ethan looked at the central structure, then back at the advancing hybrids. "We don't need a way out," he said. "We just need to end this." He grabbed the last of their explosives. Farah understood immediately. "You're thinking too small," she said. Ethan smirked. "Good." They moved together, fighting through the swarm. Every step forward cost them. Every second brought more enemies. But they kept going, because that's what humans did. They endured. They adapted. They fought. Ethan reached the base of the structure. "Set charges," he shouted. Naveed planted explosives along the base, hands shaking but precise. Farah covered them, her shots clean and deadly. The hybrids closed in. "Almost done," Naveed yelled. Ethan turned, firing his last rounds. Click. Empty. A hybrid lunged. Ethan braced. And then it dropped. "Farah, charges set," Naveed shouted. Ethan grabbed the detonator. "Run." They ran. The tunnel behind them twisted, trying to stop them. But they were faster, stronger, human. They burst into the upper level just as Ethan hit the trigger. The explosion shook the earth. The ground collapsed inward, the entire structure imploding. A wave of energy surged upward, tearing through the organic growth. And then, silence. Again. But this time, it felt like victory. Ethan leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Farah and Naveed stood beside him. "We did it," Naveed said. Ethan shook his head. "No," he said, looking at the dark horizon. In the distance, more of those structures rose. More hives. More monsters. This was just one. Farah followed his gaze. "Then we take them all down." Ethan nodded slowly, because now they understood. This wasn't just an invasion. It was an evolution. And Humanity was not prey. Humanity was the problem. And problems get solved. Ethan Carter picked up his weapon. "Let's go to work." Because the war had changed. And humans were about to change with it. The sky was no longer a sky. Ethan Carter stood at the edge of the ruined highway, staring upward as the clouds twisted into something alive. Dark spirals churned slowly, like a giant eye opening above the earth. Lightning flickered inside the mass, not white or blue, but a deep, unnatural violet. "They're changing the atmosphere," Farah said quietly. Ethan didn't respond immediately. His mind was replaying everything they had seen. The creatures, the hive, the hybrids. This wasn't just an invasion anymore. It was a takeover. Complete, systematic, inevitable, unless someone stopped it. Naveed adjusted the strap on his rifle and exhaled. Command finally got through again. Ethan turned. "And they've identified a primary signal source," Naveed said. "Something coordinating all of this." Farah frowned. "A central brain. More like a command node," Naveed replied. "Deep underground. Bigger than anything we've seen." Ethan's eyes sharpened. "Location." Naveed hesitated for just a second. "Directly beneath the old defense research facility." Ethan almost laughed. "Of course it is." Farah understood instantly. They didn't just pick random cities. "No," Ethan said. "They picked targets that mattered." The facility had been one of humanity's most advanced research hubs. Weapons development, experimental tech, biological studies. If the aliens had taken it, "They're not just adapting," Ethan said slowly. "They're learning from us." A distant rumble rolled across the land. Not from below this time. From above, 3 massive shapes began to descend through the clouds. Ships. Not like anything human. Organic. Shifting. Alive. "They're reinforcing," Naveed said, tightening his grip. Ethan shook his head. No, the ships opened, and something dropped. Not creatures. Not yet. Pods. Hundreds of them. They slammed into the ground across the city, embedding themselves like seeds. Farah's voice dropped. They're accelerating. Ethan looked back toward the horizon. Toward the facility. Then we don't have time. He turned to his team. This ends now. The journey to the facility was worse than anything they had faced so far. The closer they got, the thicker the alien growth became. Entire roads were swallowed. Buildings were fused together with black organic structures that pulsed like a living heart. And the creatures. They were different now. Stronger, faster, smarter. They didn't attack blindly anymore. They hunted. The first ambush came without warning. A creature dropped from above, targeting Naveed. Ethan reacted instantly, shoving him aside and taking the hit himself. He slammed into the ground, pain exploding through his already injured ribs. Contact! Farah shouted. Gunfire erupted, but the creature dodged. It learned. Mid-fight, Ethan forced himself up, grabbing a fallen piece of metal. As the creature lunged again, he sidestepped and drove the shard straight into one of its glowing lines. It shrieked. Farah finished it with a precise shot. They're faster, she said. Ethan nodded. And we're running out of time. They pushed forward, fighting, bleeding, surviving, because stopping meant extinction. By the time they reached the facility, the sun had disappeared completely behind the alien storm. The structure stood, barely, or what was left of it. Half the building had been consumed by the hive, transformed into a towering mass of alien architecture. Tendrils extended outward, connecting to the surrounding city like a nervous system. This is it, Naveed said. Ethan stepped forward. Stay sharp. Inside, it was worse. The walls were alive, not metaphorically. They moved, shifted, reacted to their presence. This place, Farah whispered. It's thinking. Ethan didn't argue, because he felt it too. A presence, watching, learning. They moved deeper. Corridors twisted unnaturally, leading them toward a central chamber. And then, they heard voices. Human voices. Ethan raised a hand, signaling silence. They moved carefully, approaching the source. What they saw stopped them cold. Dozens of humans stood in a large chamber. Not restrained, not fighting, standing, still, their eyes glowing faintly. Connected, controlled. They're networked, Naveed whispered. Ethan stepped forward slowly. Can they be saved? No one answered, because deep down, they already knew. One of the humans turned. Its mouth opened, and a voice came out. Not human, not entirely. You persist, it said. The entire room shifted. All the heads turned toward them. Adaptation noted. The voice continued. Resistance level high. Ethan stepped forward. You're not taking this planet. A pause. Then, correction. The voice said. We already have. The floor opened, and something rose. The core, larger than anything they had seen. A massive structure of light and darkness intertwined, pulsing with energy. Inside it, shapes moved constantly. Millions of them. Data, consciousness, life. This is the command node, Farah said, barely able to breathe. Ethan nodded. And it needs to go. The voice echoed again. You are inefficient. You are limited. You will be integrated. The controlled humans began to move. Slowly at first, then faster. Here we go, Naveed muttered. The fight was immediate, brutal, different. These weren't creatures anymore. They were people, enhanced, stronger, smarter. And Ethan hesitated, just for a second. That was enough. One of them slammed into him, sending him crashing to the ground. Ethan, Farah shouted. He struggled as the hybrid pinned him, its glowing eyes staring into his. For a moment, he saw something. A flicker. Human. Help. It whispered. Ethan froze. Then his expression hardened. I'm sorry. He drove his knife into its core. It went still. Farah and Naveed fought beside him, but they were being overwhelmed. There's too many, Naveed shouted. Ethan looked at the core, then at the structural supports around it. Then back at his team. We don't fight them, he said. We end it. Farah understood instantly. The whole structure. Ethan nodded. Everything. Naveed's eyes widened. That'll collapse the entire area. Ethan met his gaze. Exactly. No more words were needed. They moved. Planting charges. Dodging attacks. Every second was a fight for survival. The voice grew louder. Threat level critical. Initiating containment. The walls began to close. The exits sealed. Faster. Ethan shouted. Naveed finished the last charge. Done. Ethan grabbed the detonator. But before he could trigger it, the core pulsed. A wave of energy slammed into them. Ethan dropped to one knee, his vision blurring. And then, he heard it. Not the alien voice. Human voices. Thousands of them. Inside his head. Stop. Please. Help us. Don't let us become this. Ethan clenched his fists. His hand trembled on the detonator. Farah's voice cut through everything. Ethan. He looked at her, at Naveed, at the core, at the trapped souls inside it. And he made his choice. Forgive me, he whispered. He pressed the trigger. The explosion was immediate, violent, absolute. The core shattered. The chamber collapsed. The entire facility began to fall apart. Run, Farah shouted. They ran. Through collapsing corridors. Through shifting walls. Through chaos. The ground shook violently as the structure imploded. They burst outside just as the entire facility collapsed into itself. A massive shockwave tore through the city. And then, silence. The sky began to clear. Slowly, the storm above started to fade. The alien structures stopped moving. Stopped growing. Stopped existing. Naveed stared. We did it. Farah exhaled, her shoulders dropping. Ethan looked at the horizon. The pods, the ships, everything had gone still. Disconnected. Yeah, he said quietly. We did. Days later, the world began to recover. The creatures that remained were disorganized. Weaker. Human forces pushed back. City by city. Country by country. It wasn't easy. It wasn't quick. But it was happening. Humanity was winning. Ethan stood on a rooftop, watching the sunrise. A real sunrise. For the first time in days. Farah joined him. Command says they're calling it a turning point, she said. Ethan nodded. They're right. Naveed walked up, holding 2 cups of something that vaguely resembled coffee. Figured we earned this, he said, handing one to Ethan. Ethan took it. Yeah, he said. They stood there in silence for a moment. Then Farah spoke. Do you think it's over? Ethan looked at the sky. Clear, calm, peaceful. He took a slow breath. No, he said. Neither do I, Naveed added. Ethan smiled slightly. Good, because humanity had learned something. Something important. We weren't alone. We weren't the strongest, but we were something else. We were relentless. We adapted. We endured. And when pushed to the edge, we pushed back harder. Ethan Carter turned away from the sunrise. There's still work to do, he said. Farah and Naveed followed, because this wasn't just survival anymore. This was resistance. This was humanity's answer. And it was only the beginning. Because no matter what came next, monsters, aliens, darkness itself, there was one truth they would all learn. Humans don't break. Humans don't surrender. Humans fight. And humans win.